Hi there, I'm Peter Llewellyn from NetworkPharma TV. This is one of my unscripted conversations, as I call them, where I get to chat to folks who I think will be able to share something useful with us. So let's see what we can learn today. Last week, my guest Rina was awarded and I'm going to read this out, IPG Health Medical Communications Award for Healthcare Communiquétor at the Communique Awards 2025 in London, which is run by the PM Group. So I'm using it as a bit of an excuse, Rina, to grab you. I thought it'd be interesting to have a bit of a chat about the award, obviously, more importantly about your specialist interest areas in compliance and so on. So thanks very much for joining me. If we may, I'd just like to start with a simple introduction. Just tell us who you are, in your own words, who you are, what's your current role, and tell us briefly how you got there, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you very much for the kind invite, Peter, to join you today. In terms of my background and how I got to where I am, I'm a pharmacist. A lot of people kind of join medical roles in pharma with that sort of similar background as well. I was told very early on I couldn't really get to the top of where I wanted to be because I was only a pharmacist and not a medic. So I was sort of determined to change some of that,
You wanted to fight that then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So despite that, I kind of did quite a few different medical roles, which I think again is quite common in pharma. So the pharmacovigilance, regulatory, medical affairs, scientific affairs, kept sort of, skipping from place to place, not really finding my, kind of passion until I landed on compliance. And when I set up my first company, that's where I was determined to change some of the rules there for pharmacists, got those changed, which allow pharmacists to be at the same level as qualified medics in terms of the kind of compliance responsibilities. And then recruited a huge team of pharmacists, and we did really well. So I guess this company that I'm at now is my second company. It's much more boutique. We specialize in healthcare compliance. Code clarity, we have a very clear mission statement, and that is it's all about compliance confidence for everybody and not just a few. Long gone are those days where, and I can see other people doing it as well, where we focus on the signatories, we pander to the seniors. Absolutely not. That's been the problem in pharma.
Right. Okay, that's very clear, and I know you're passionate on this, and people can find you on LinkedIn and speaking at various meetings and so on. So maybe I would like to pursue that a little bit more, but let's just deal with the award, okay? Because it's a bit of fun in a way, but it's also there's a serious side to it. We'll just call you Healthcare Communiquétor rather than the full title now, if that's okay with everybody. So just tell us, just for my interest, apart from anything else, what happened? Did you put yourself up? Did someone else put yourself up? Did you enjoy the award evening? Just give us a bit of a sense of what goes on at those things.
Yeah, so actually it's my first Communique experience, interaction and awards ever. So that was kind of eye-opening. I've been to lots of other awards in terms of pharma field, pharma marketing, the digital awards and so on. What was interesting about Communique are these categories for individuals as well as teams and campaigns. And my co-founder, Jean, decided that she would nominate me for the Healthcare Communiquétor Award. And as far as I understand it, we had collected testimonials, as good agency professionals should do, I believe.
Anyway.
The course of your work is you're only as good as your last project. Try and collect feedback, keep a record of all the positive stuff that you're doing. We need that praise. We need it for ourselves, but we also need it in pitches and so on. So we had a really good collection of the kinds of stuff I'd done. And in this kind of area of communications, compliance had never won. I don't know about whether other compliance people have ever entered these awards, but the code and compliance is probably one of the trickiest, if not the trickiest area to communicate in a very simple yet effective way. So that was what the entry really focused on. So a complete shock and a complete surprise, because there weren't any, it went in and then, there was the awards night itself. So there was no shortlisting, there was no further interview, very simple in that respect. And the awards of course, were fabulous and glittery, and I recommend them to everybody, but it's an opportunity. Awards always are an opportunity. There are a certain group of people that really need awards, and there are other people that don't need awards, but they come along and you think, this is a lovely way. And for me, I appreciate the award, but I appreciate it on behalf of all compliance professionals, because I've been striving to make compliance as cool and as sexy as commercial and medical. And they don't have their own awards ceremony. We don't even have our own professional body in the UK. So it's been hard to get it up to that level where the whole industry sits up and goes, oh, actually, compliance is worthy of an award.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's a fun evening, I know, and and there's a lot of people who are celebrated through those awards, and it's a good. I appreciate it, and it's just a good evening, isn't it? Let's face it. But it's interesting what you're saying, highlighting the role of compliance and so on. But it's also interesting. I think earlier on you said something like, I'll slightly misquote you here, but you said something like you found your passion in compliance. And I mean, to be slightly sort of flippant about it, most people probably don't get that excited about compliance. Is that a fair thing to say? If anything, they see it as a problem area. So just explore that one a little bit. What are you up against?
Yeah, I mean, I completely accept that, Peter, and I find that people that aren't working in compliance do feel like that about compliance. But the thing about compliance for me, and specifically compliance with the ABPI code, is that I find it super interesting. And when the cases get published, each case is a story. And that is really how I operate. I love the story. I love telling stories. And each story has a beginning, middle, and an end, and a learning point. And they are really neat ways of conveying to a client how to comply. I don't try and think of the negative, which is what the breach is and what the fine was and what happened. Turn that story into a positive, and the client, when they have that light bulb moment, that is so satisfying that it's a whole closed loop sort of system for me. And that is why I find compliance really interesting, because of the impact it has on clients' ability to improve.
Excellent. And just as an observer, I suppose, I mean, a few years ago, there weren't compliance experts, or there was one or two. I can think of one or two, actually,
Yeah,
from a few.
you probably think of
But
Joan
in the last,
Barnard.
Joan Barnard. Okay, so Joan, God love. So what? But it's boomed, if I can put it that way, in the last few years. Let's be honest about it. Yeah, it's a healthy business to be in. There's a lot of you. It's interesting what you said, that there isn't, you haven't got your own. I'd not thought about that before. You haven't got your own sort of grouping or something. Is that something that might happen? I mean, is that something that people have talked about, or I'm just now casually thinking about something I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where I'll start ranting a little bit now, because the PMCPA, so that's the authority
Right.
that enforces the code,
Yeah.
they run a compliance network. So if anything, I think they would argue, well, we do have a meeting of sorts and a collection of similar people, except the only people they invite are people who are ABPI members. And as we know, there are significantly more non-ABPI companies and members who agree to adhere to the code, who have no voice at that table and no insight as to what's to come next. And that just seems slightly unfair. So yes, there's no representative body, independent or unbiased, that compliance people have in the UK.
Okay, well, there's an action point for somebody. Just out of interest, to clarify, while I'm listening to you talk, I think I'm right in saying you concentrate on the ABPI, the UK code. Do you get involved in the international codes, FPA, and so on? I mean, just again, for my own information, where do you draw the lines for yourself, or do you not?
I mean, we have to draw lines because it's just so ridiculously complicated. And the codes, I mean, in Europe, the FPA code exists, and it exists because it must be embedded in the national country codes. And so we share this huge commonality across Europe. I hate it when French colleagues will say, but we're allowed to do this in France. And I have to say, well, no, you're not, because you also adhere to the FPA code. So a good example is promotion of prescription-only medicines to the public. That is in EU law, which is why it's in the FPA code. And by the way, our membership of FPA is not affected by Brexit. That's the one piece of good news. So then each country adds on top of that its own quirks and specificities. And that's where it gets really tricky. To be a master of all codes means you're probably not very good at any code. So we have decided that we will specialize in the ABPI code. Of course, we can draw parallels to other countries, but other countries have their own experts. So we don't need to be experts in everything.
But in a global marketplace with people moving around. I mean, meetings are always the classic example where you get people from different countries coming together in a country, and suddenly you've got multiple codes clashing with each other. I mean, again, have you got any sort of little stories or something you can share? Because I mean, there are some fun stories of how that goes horribly wrong, isn't there?
There's so many stories, Peter,
That's
and I
good.
mean, yeah, and they all start with global at the beginning. And I'm sure lots of people in pharma experience, it doesn't matter whether you're small, medium, or large pharma, we all experience this phenomenon of global don't know anything about the ABPI code. And my point is, why should they know anything about the ABPI code? These poor people in global are working with all the affiliates. You can't expect them. And the simple trick here is just to educate your global colleagues at every opportunity that if there's any UK nexus to a meeting, it could be UK soil, UK speaker, UK delegate, whatever it is, then just let the UK know. You don't need to know the UK code at all. But just that simple trick mitigates so much risk. I'd say 90% of risk is mitigated just by somebody telling the UK. Because then the UK, who do know the UK code, can do something about it.
Right, right. And just out of interest, because it's an obvious avenue we're going down now, as AI comes into everyone's working practice and so on, I mean, is it as obvious as, well, AI can solve all these problems? Because AI could sort of give you the answer across all these different codes and all these documents and just go, this is what to do, and what is happening in real life. Just talk a bit about that.
Yes, is the short answer to all of that. If you were in global and you were organizing, for example, an international meeting with delegates from all these countries, and your brain was being fried and you didn't want to talk to every single affiliate, there are tools out there which allow you to say, well, what is the subsistence limit in all these countries? How do you organize something which meets all the country codes? That, of course, is a perfect case study for AI.
And is it happening in real life? I mean, are you encouraging that sort of thing? Are you
We
developing your
are
own tools? I don't
we
know.
aren't developing it. Yeah, what we are doing is that we're in talks, or we have demoed, or we are, kind of trying to get to see demos. There are at least 20 providers that we've come across so far
Right,
of AI solutions in the compliance space.
right,
What a lot of these are experiencing, what they're suffering from, is that some of them, and they'll know who I'm talking about. I mean, they are geeks in their bedroom who've rang me up and said, we've spotted a niche in pharma, we've developed something which crawls the codes. And I'm like, brilliant. But if you can't communicate that need to pharma and make pharma understand which solution am I providing here, for what point, for what purpose, then you have a defunct product on your hands. So a lot of these people have never worked in pharma. They're great AI geeks. They're brilliant at what they do. But this is the problem with AI. You need to find an internal or an external expert who can bridge the solution to the need.
I mean, having said that, I mean, I find it fascinating having lots of conversations like this for a long time, I suppose. But you need the geeks, you need the people playing with it to make people think about it. And so I suppose one of my questions would be, whilst they're geeking and wanting to develop these tools, are you seeing on the other side, as it were, in the companies, the need and the demand? I mean, do they recognize that this could be a good thing? So they've just got to find the match. So it's not like you're entirely knocking at a shut door. It's just you got to find the way of presenting it properly. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
There
do.
is that
I
need
do.
on the pharma company side.
Yeah. We have, I mean, I'll pick one particular area, which is MLR, medical, legal, regulatory, which is the review that's conducted before materials are sort of finally signed off. That review process is extremely admin heavy. It's a huge burden, but at the end of the day, it's just a checklist of somebody. I don't need to be highly qualified to do this, who is checking that the black triangle is black, that the non-proprietary name is present. And so that is an area where AI could do very, very well. Now, the problem is that you are essentially scaring people in pharma and potentially the decision makers here in thinking, well, why would I advocate a system or a tool that is essentially going to see me out of a job? So this is where the agencies or the vendors need to be a little bit clever and go, they are the users of the tool. They are not your decision maker. They're not your target audience. And then we have a business discussion with these various companies to say, Well, whose life are you making easier? Essentially, it's always going to be commercial. So I hate to say it, but some of these compliance tools that we see on the market now, like Vidori and Viva and so on, the target audience isn't compliance. Compliance don't hold the budget, and they're not even the decision maker on it. They're an advocate, they're a blocker, but essentially compliance tools are sold to commercial because it's commercial's life that is made easier. So that is the way forward. That's what we will see. That savvy people, AI savvy people in commercial will identify the need themselves, and they will push it on to their medical colleagues.
And again, every AI discussion tiptoes around this one about, an AI tool helps, it doesn't take your job. And you can be honest, there's a spectrum of sort of, where you can be, well, I don't mind disrupting all the jobs, and someone else going, oh, no.
Yeah. I'll say something now which will upset people, which is the AI should be taking over review jobs. There shouldn't be anyone doing review.
So my question on that one, just to see that slightly, okay, because I think there's a big discussion in there, but it does sort of come up in these discussions. So as we're talking about jobs, and you're going, and we're all sort of saying, well, it can take away the rubbish and the grungy jobs and the stuff we don't want to do, and give us time to work on the clever, strategic, and all that. The problem is, and I think it's becoming quite obvious now. I mean, that junior level, entry level jobs in some areas are disappearing, because that's how we learn. How do you end up being an expert reviewer if you haven't gone through all the pain to begin with? I mean, do you think there is something in that?
Yeah, you're quite right. I think some of the best signatories that we've ever seen and trained have been people who have started in MedInfo or MedComs, and they have done the grunt work. And some of the worst signatories that we've ever seen could be senior level medics who've just been plonked into a signatory role without having done any of the donkey work before. So you're absolutely right. However, there are things that a signatory would do still in their job which will never be replaced by AI. So they need to check that, whatever AI has done in their review has been accurate. So they will still be doing the grunt job. You don't just come in and certify a piece of material. You will still be reviewing to check that AI has done a good job. And we've been, for years replacing the grunt with checklists. And there's an argument I know that some people say, well, checklists can stop the brain from engaging and stop the brain from working. And we would argue, well, why would you waste your time and your brain space and your energy on the boring stuff? Save it for the nuanced kind of balance of information and the detail like that. So that would be the solution, that signatories would still essentially do the review, but they're doing a check rather than the actual review.
Okay. Just turning it around slightly, and I'm not very close to it anymore, so I'm now going to draw on experience from years ago, when code violations or the cases took ages to go through the system. And I mean, I remember the early days of the internet, so I'm going back a long time, but I remember I got a bit of a reputation as being getting a bit excited about this, because there was one particular meeting where we found out that a particular case had gone a particular way. And I said, this is completely ridiculous. It's taken a year for you to go through that process, but nobody knows about it. And then you decided you're going to appeal it, and it's taken the best part of a year to go through it. So 2 years on, we found out something very simple, and none of us even knew that this was. I mean, my perception is that things are much better, and they've tried very hard, but my perception is it's still a problem. And the obvious question, to follow what we've been talking about, is any moves at the PMC-EPA to bring AI in to somehow move things along faster or something? How big a problem is it still? Or am I being overly, jaundiced by my background experience? Is it better now or not? You look like you were shaking your head.
No, I don't think it is better, is the short answer. In terms of the very specific question about timelines and their processing times, they have not improved. Now, why that's really quite important to discuss now is because they have put measures in place to reduce the timelines. They've recruited way more people. And quorum for a panel to sit and adjudicate on a case is only 2 people. There's 9 of them now who could potentially sit on a panel. That means there could be 4 panels occurring a day, and yet we're still seeing the timelines being pretty bad. We are also seeing that there's a new abridged procedure which allows for certain rulings to be fast-tracked as such, But last year, the average processing time for a case was 67 weeks. And my view, and lots of other people's view, is that is entirely unacceptable, because we are striving to learn and improve. And if we don't find out, as you say, Peter, really significant stuff that we've all been doing, by the way, for the past year, and it hits us. And the other side of it, which is an external view, so non-pharma people, like members of the public, patient organizations, their view is, well, pharma has been allowed to get away with that. They've been using this material until they've stopped using it. And then the PMCPA make a ruling. Well, it's too late because they've stopped using that material now. And so it just paints the PMCPA as pretty toothless, really, in their sanctions.
That fast track service, which I'm only aware of, so I don't know the details, but I'm aware of it. Has that at least made some impact in some areas?
No, I mean, it depends on how you describe impact. Impact in terms of timelines, yes. The first ever abridged procedure case took 67 days as opposed to 67 weeks. But it was the piddliest, most boring breach in the world, which the company immediately went, yeah, sorry about that. So you can't really compare apples and pears there. I hope they don't cling on to that.
And 67 days is still a long time for the sort of case that I think you're talking about. I mean, it's just bonkers, isn't it? But okay. But sorry, the specific question I won't let you get away with. You may or may not know the answer to it or have a view on it, but are they using AI tools? I mean, you know, can we see them starting to look at that sort of thing?
I posed the question maybe 2 years ago to them, because when you look at case rulings, they're hugely duplicated. They can be kind of copied and pasted from other cases, and there's inconsistency as well. So I did flag to them, there's a beautiful opportunity here for the panel when they write up cases to use AI. And their response was, we're too busy to consider using AI, which just goes to show you that that chicken and egg situation for them may prevail if somebody fresh doesn't disrupt their way of thinking.
The old classic, I'm too busy to go on a time management course to, you know,
to organize myself.
Yeah. Hugely frustrating for someone like me. But then I have the luxury of being able to sit back and just criticize other people. It's easy when you work for yourself and you sort yourself out.
Same could be said about me, to be honest with you. We're pretty vocal at pointing out the inefficiencies, but I haven't done nothing. I wrote an SOP for the PMCPA 7 years ago on complaint management. I took it to the ABPI, the MHRA. The PMCPA themselves agreed that they would implement it at the next code review. I remind them at the next code review, because what this industry lacks, what we all have to have are SOPs. And if we don't have an SOP, they're down on us like a ton of bricks. Yet, where is their SOP? Why can't we see it? Why aren't they held to account to have timelines? You know, it's really, it all boils down to it being very unfair.
So just in the last couple of minutes, this is a ridiculous question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Just, you know, from your point of view, just let yourself go a little bit. You know, we're you know, a couple of minutes of just you ranting a little bit about what you think we should do differently in the industry. Go on, have a bit of fun.
You know, what I think we should all be striving for is that we need a big fat mission statement that we need to see the PMCPA redundant one day. We don't truly believe that, and therefore we still act in a manner which is, you know, the intercompany dialogue, the escalating, the anonymous, non-contactable complainants. We need to, as an industry, sit down and say, we don't want any complaints. We want the PMCPA to be twiddling their thumbs and to be made redundant. Why aren't we striving for that? Why has no one said that there needs to be no complaints anymore?
It's still true that the majority of complaints come from other member companies.
No, not at all. The majority of complaints come from sort of a variety of different people. Some are employees, ex-employees. Some of them are anonymous, so we'll never know. But the official ones from other companies are quite low.
Right. Okay. And to follow the point, in fact, you made it earlier on, to follow that point that you've just been saying, it needs to be the whole industry, not just a select group of companies that have chosen to join a particular organization, sort of thing. I know there's a whole discussion we could get into that. Look, I love these discussions, and I would sit here and sit back and listen to you talking for ages more, but we have a certain amount of time, and I just really appreciate you coming online. congratulations on the award, which was an excuse for us to have a chat, but good for you. And I'm glad you enjoyed your evening. The stuff you've touched on is, I think, really interesting. I hope people watching this will follow up, and I know I can speak for you and say you're very happy to hear from people. LinkedIn is the obvious way to do it. Little plug for me: come and see NetworkPharma TV, where there's now hundreds and hundreds of videos and people and opinion and whatever. Go and look at NetworkPharma TV. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. But Rina, thank you so much for joining in, and I'll say goodbye with a little wave. Take care. Bye.